Today is January the 6th. Yes, happy War Pigs Crawling Day. I hope that you got the government oppression that you deserved, whether it be good or for bad, and I hope that those that you love were able to give you the gifts that you even wanted for celebrating the day, that those who have made people fear for their lives around the world got to fear for their lives for one simple day, and then go back to work a couple hours later. But we'll talk about that, some of the reaction to this, and what's happening with that. In other news, Kevin McCarthy falls short yet again, 13 times, 13 votes as we go into day 5 of whether or not we're going to have a Speaker of the House. And, well, again, I don't really care that much about that. I kind of hope that we continue to go without one. But we will talk about that and what's happening with that and where this leads us as we go in and talk about Kevin McCarthy, the House, and the 15 votes that he did manage to flip back. Let's see. CNN shows that it has absolutely no class and uses Damar Hamlin's cardiac arrest to attack Republicans because, of course, they did. And Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earls comes out and makes a very, very base statement about private schooling and school choice. It is going to be all this and more. Happy January 6th. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. I gotta fire that producer. Where the hell is Producer Pepe anyway? Because I think every day this week I've started off without my microphone on. And I know at least once I've come back from video without my microphone on as well. But yeah, we gotta get a new producer. Happy January 6th, everybody. My name is Jay Edgar. Welcome to your evening news. This is Contemporary. And we've got a lot of stuff to go over here today as we gather in and celebrate this on the most holiest of days. So, strap yourselves in. Grab a loved one, and think about the government that we could have been without. On this, the holiest day to the left, the day that they can use to badger anybody that they don't like. From here until the end of eternity, even though this really doesn't clear the top 10 in the worst days in American history. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some of the speeches, some of the things that are going along with this. Biden made another big gaffe-filled speech because it's a day that ends in Y. So we'll be talking about that. Plus, the speakership thing rolls on. Yes, Kevin McCarthy still has not gained enough votes to get over his magical 218 numbers, but I think at this point he's actually beating Hakeem Jeffries. Because I think at this point it's 215 to 212, but we'll talk about that as well. So, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of stuff to talk about here. And, well, the Republicans I knew were going to sell out anyway. But we're going to talk about all of it over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, and the No Gimmicks podcast as we come together to bring you a better news and culture experience from the common man for the common man. That's right. We are trying to build a world where you don't have to get all of your news from people who wear suits that cost more than your house. Some of the goals coming forward is to actually get a website with some written articles on there and get some on-the-ground reporting, so we're the ones making the news, rather than just rereading what we get off of various other places where, I mean, let's face it, the people are wearing suits that cost more than our houses. For those of us who have houses, I mean, I'm still renting right now, but we've got that. We've got a ton to go over here today, and let's get into it and let's get started. Tell a friend, tell 10 friends, and by the way, if you've got anything especially spicy to say, do keep in mind that the end of the show brings us some wonderful live chat. I have written down the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat throughout the week in the handy dandy notebook, and I will be reading your chats today and addressing what it is you have to say. And I do hope that we get to see some stuff from the January 6th Selfie Fest, or if we want to go the left route, insurrection. But we'll be talking about that as well over here on Contemporary. Let's get started. Let's start in with the finance. Looking at the Dow to start with for the day. The Dow finishing out the day and the week at 33,630.61, which impressively enough came out with a 2% jump on the stocks today. And that is, of course, coming with the fact that those on Wall Street, the rich ones who are making money off of you, are celebrating the fact that wages didn't come up high enough. And we actually got a weaker than expected jobs report as well, which means the crush is coming and people are going to stop spending money. Yes, that's right. That's the way these idiots trade. They don't care about you. They don't like you. They want you to be destitute. But, you know, it is what it is, and we'll see what happens with that. Looking in at the Bitcoin, which is still holding steady, is at 137.30 up. That's in US dollars at 16,962 US dollars and 80 US cents. That is up just shy of 1%, 0.82% on the day. And it looks like it tumbled throughout the beginning of the day and then started to steadily climb up with one little spike that quickly calmed itself back out. So a few things happening with Bitcoin, but it's mostly holding steady right now. I think a lot of people are afraid to go one direction or another with it, with FTX being what it did. So we'll see what happens with that. We do have some FTX news at the very end of the show because most of us is going to be dedicated to January 6th and the speakership rates, but we'll talk about that. And looking at your gas prices on Madison, if your gas prices are following the trend that Madison is, you are going to start to see some slight reprieve over the brief spike that we had over this past week. The average coming down closer to 3 at this point. We still have some outliers that are up, but we also have some outliers that are down below 3 at this point. The quick trip is at 289 regular on the far west side. The other quick trip going out in the southeast is at 316. That's down from 320. On the isthmus is up down to 3 even, down from 310 yesterday. The quick trip entering the isthmus is at 311, down from 320 yesterday. The quick trip on the north side holding steady at 316. The quick trip leaving town on 151 is at 310, also holding steady. The quick trip going out of town on the east side is at 289, holding steady. The BP going out of town on the Beltline is at 307. So a little bit up, a little bit down, but for the most part, the average is moving back closer to 3. Not great reprieve. You know, I still remember when the average was 168, but, you know, we got to take every little victory that we can get because the upper 1% is going to continue to screw us over and over and over again, no matter which way they can go. But we'll continue to watch this and see what happens. No IBD article tonight. They didn't have one prepared and ready to go, but instead we will come back and read one from the New York Post and the Daily Wire before we get into our January 6th news. And again, for these next couple articles, while we talk finance, get some friends in here. Let's go have a conversation about January 6th. From the New York Post, the Dow jumps 700 points as December jobs report eases rate worries. From Reuters, Wall Street's main indices closed higher on Friday on news that U.S. payrolls expanded more than expected, so we got more jobs, wage increases slowed, and services activity contracted, which means people aren't going out to eat as much, and therefore the wages are contracting in that sector of the industry. So, your wages are still not keeping up with inflation. But that's a good thing because you're going to go out and spend less while the government still spends in a runaway fashion. I love how the Wall Street people can get away with the sentiment. And people still come out and say, oh yes, no, we take you at your word. The Dow Industrial Average soared 700.53 points, or 2.1%, to 33,630.61. The S&P climbed 2.3, and the Nasdaq was up 2.6. The non-farm payrolls rose by 223,000 jobs in December, Data from the Labor Department showed while a 0.3% rise in average earnings was smaller than expected and lower than the previous month. The numbers for November were revised to show non-farm payrolls rose by 256,000 and average earnings grew by 0.4. Another set of data showed U.S. services activity contracted for the first time in more than 2.5 years in December, amid weakening demand with more signs of inflation abating. There's no sign of inflation abating. It's not abating. We got good news on the inflation front with wage gains that are slowing. We got participation rates pick up again, and we're still creating jobs. Meanwhile, I will remind you that a lot of these people are going out and getting second jobs because their wages didn't keep up with inflation. The only reason that I'm not getting a second job is I was able to go to a new company and demand that I get a wage that keeps up with inflation, and they said yes. It's kind of a win-win for the economy. And on the other side, the ISM Services report was really weak and broadly weak, said Megan Horniman, Chief Investment Officer at Verdense Capital Management in Hunt Valley, Maryland. That's basically making people think the Fed is nearing the end of what's been the most aggressive tightening cycles we've seen in decades. That's why the markets are taking off. Big tech and other growth stocks such as Microsoft, Apple, and Meta platforms rose between 1% and 4%, helped by a decline in the 10-year U.S. Treasury yield. Tesla rose 2.5% even after the company cut electric car prices in China for the second time in less than 3 months. A resilient labor market that has powered the economy through consumer spending, but could prompt the Fed to lift its target interest rate above the 5.1% peak it had projected last month to keep it there for a while. Earlier this week, the minutes from the Fed's December meeting showed that the central bank was laser-focused on fighting inflation even as officials agreed to slow the pace of rate hikes to limit some risk to the economic growth. Well, we're getting to a couple points in the inflation. Part of it is the fact that some of this stuff has to draw back because people can't afford to spend this money on this stuff anymore. It's been the same thing with the housing market. With some of the houses that I've seen and looked at just coming off the market based solely on the fact that nobody can afford the house prices and the mortgage rate. So people either have to lower it to a point where they lose money or just take it off the market and sit on it for a little while. The groceries, people are going to baser ingredients, not getting the box stuff. The easy stuff, the fast stuff, because they can't afford the easy stuff and the fast stuff. If you want the easy and the fast, you have to pay for it. People are focusing on making their, either buying used on a television or something, or making the one that they have last. I was actually a little bit depressed over the weekend because while I opened up the dresser drawer, a TV that was not meant to fit on the dresser it was sitting on, the wire got caught in the dresser drawer and fell down, and that was probably one of the first big purchases I've been able to make in my adult life. Was a 32-inch Samsung flat screen TV. But I went out and spent $60 and got a replacement for it over the weekend, secondhand, off Facebook Marketplace, of all places. My friend looked it up for me and found it. I didn't go back and do that myself, but rather than just going out and buying a new TV, as most people do, I went back and grabbed a used one. So, a lot of things are happening right now. People, if they can go back and get something for free, are getting it for free. Or if they find it at a discount, they're finding it at a discount. And it's starting to hurt the markets. But that's what we have for that. Let's grab one from the Daily Wire, talking a little bit more about unemployment. Unemployment plummets in December as Federal Reserve vows more rate hikes, from Ben Ziesloft. Unemployment fell in December, with number of new jobs soared past economists' forecasts, according to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released on Friday. Total non-farms increased by 223,000, surpassing analysts' expectations of 200,000 new positions, but they're becoming crap positions. This is just like the Obama economy all over again. Oh, look at me! I created all these jobs. Look at all these jobs. They're great. I've got all these jobs. I'm the one. I made all this happen. And yet we're getting minimum wage and sometimes sub-minimum wage jobs out of it. Let's see. The unemployment rate declined from 3.7% in November to 3.5% in December, which, again, some of that is where people are either losing their benefits and going on to a longer-term solution for unemployment, or going back and taking whatever they can find in the workforce because they ran out of unemployment benefits and they need something to keep a family going. Let's do some Zappy here. I don't know why I don't have any mods on YouTube. That's the only place that the robots bomb me anymore. They never bomb me on Twitch anymore. Bye-bye. Bankrate senior economic analyst Mark Hamrick said in comments provided the Daily Wire with the jobs report provides a measure of reassurance regarding job security. As the labor market remains resilient despite economic turmoil, the sector is witnessing the most robust job gains include leisure and hospitality. You know, the part-time or lower wage jobs out there. Healthcare is one that is rebounding, though, as people are looking at this and saying, hey, that's always in demand. So they go into that. Construction actually rising. I'm a little surprised by that. The report also showed that there exist roughly 10.5 million job openings and 5.7 million unemployed individuals, reflecting a controlled labor market that has worsened inflationary pressures as employers struggle to fill their payrolls. Average hourly earnings accordingly rose 4.6% year over year, falling below the 5% estimate from analysts. Nominal wages have grown over the past 2 years, but have increased at a slower rate than the price levels, implying the depressed purchasing power among households. Worker pay is failing to keep up with the rise in prices at the consumer level. This is a source of stress on household budgets, Hamrick continued. That's how it equation unfolds in the months ahead will be key, including whether inflation pressures relent. So, a few things that are happening in the markets. We will see where it goes and what's going to happen with that. But we're not here to talk about the markets. You know what the title card is. You know what we're here to talk about today. And it is Happy War Pigs Crawling Day, everybody. That's right. It is January the 6th, the second anniversary. And we're here to talk about what's happening with that. From CNN to start with, first on CNN, Biden to honor 12 people with Presidential Citizens Medal on 2-year anniversary of January 6th Selfie Fest. From MJ Lee, senior White House correspondent. President Brandon on Friday plans to mark the 2-year anniversary of the January 6th Selfie Fest by awarding for the first time in his presidency the Presidential Citizens Medal to 12 people. The individuals include law enforcement officers who were injured defending the Capitol, a Capitol police officer who died the day the rioters stormed the building, and election workers who rejected efforts by former President Trump to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Well, see, the one in the middle there would actually be impossible because no police officer died on that day. Biden is set to deliver remarks and host a ceremony at the White House honoring the dozen individuals chosen for having made exemplary contributions to our democracy, which means our hegemony, and shown courage and selflessness around the events of January the 6th, a White House official familiar with the details told CNN. The Presidential Citizens Medal is one of the country's highest civilian honors, given to American citizens deemed to have performed exemplary deeds of service for their country or their fellow citizens. Now, my first question here, are electors or police officers eligible for the Presidential Citizens Medal? And I'm asking this seriously. I know that there are a few people who think that that's just a snarky remark to say, oh, well, no, they don't deserve that because they were there for January 6th. No, I'm actually curious because I think everybody who's involved in this, who's coming out and getting this medal, works for the government, which, I mean, to me would say they're not a civilian. If you work directly for Congress in the Capitol Police Department, are you a citizen, a private citizen, or are you a government worker? I would actually think that a service medal would, and I'm not, don't take this as me saying something that would be construed as stolen valor by any stretch of the imagination. But these are still government workers. Biden's decision to distinguish Americans he sees as having protected the nation's capital, its hegemonic institutions and selection system, is one of the major ways which the president has sought to draw a stark contrast from his predecessor. Biden told CNN's Phil Mattingly on Thursday that he prays to God that another insurrection never happens again. Nothing about what happened on the streets after the St. George incident. Asked by Mattingly at a cabinet meeting what the significance is of the group Biden invited to the White House ceremony, a president said, a lot of thinking went into it, man. It wasn't by me, because I don't do a lot of thinking, but a lot of thinking went into it, man. And this is, again, where the question comes in, because more than half of the Friday Swell recipients are current and former law enforcement officers, government officials, federal government officials on top of it. Are they really eligible for the Presidential Citizen's Medal? So, I want to talk just a bit about this. Now, I have said for a long time that this was a setup. Every time we talk about January 6th, I remind everybody of a certain coworker that I had at the job that I was working at the time, my last job, by the way, who had told me, and he's no longer with that company either, but he left on amicable terms. They didn't can his ass, essentially. But not a lot of people liked him around there. But he had told me in a break room when we were talking, because he knew that I did amateur newscasting. And he had told me, he says, and this was, I think, in the middle of November already. And he said, yeah, you know what? They better go in there and start overturning some of those elections. Otherwise, there's going to be a day back in January if they don't fix it by then, and we're going to go tell them how we feel. And I looked at him and I said, Bob, that sounds like a trap waiting to happen. If you take the fight to the government, they will kill you. And as I've always said, I don't advocate for going in and trying to take out the Capitol. One of the most protected buildings in the country. Because A, it's not going to get you anywhere. You're going to be holed up to a place where they can go back and focus all their fire on you. They will destroy the building and blame it on you. If they've got to go drop an ICBM off of it from like Guam or Hawaii or something, or surround it and put small arms fire into it until nobody's left standing in there, they will do that. Always make the government bring the fight to you. But I've long said that I do think this is a setup, and it was brought to my attention, it was brought up on another live stream I was listening to, that the left really needed January 6th to be, well, to happen in general, and part of the reason I think that it was a setup, because they needed to have something with Republicans gathered in a place being violent so they could justify the summer of love. And so how many people have forgotten about that at this point? I mean, you never hear about the St. George riots anymore unless you're either in libertarian or right-wing circles. The normies aren't talking about it. They've forgotten about it. Even the ones that live in Kenosha. Even going by in Kenosha, seeing some of the plywood that's still on some of the walls down there. And it's still on the windows down there to this day. People have forgotten about it. I'd like to actually go up to Minneapolis, since I live so much closer now, and see just what it looks like after the St. George riots. Because I never got that direction. I was thinking about it when it was going on, but at the time that was a 5-hour drive. When Kenosha happened, that was only like 45 minutes from where I was living. But this was the convenience of this, to have something to blame on the right that was violent and explosive, just does make me wonder how much of a setup this actually was. Let's grab one from NBC. Biden and lawmakers mark January 6th anniversary with ceremonies at the White House and the Capitol. from Derek Gregorian, Peter Nicholas, and Ryan J. Riley. President Biden and members of Congress held solemn ceremonies at the White House and the Capitol on Friday to mark the second anniversary of the January 6th Selfie Fest. Biden awarded one of the nation's highest civilian honors to the police, election workers, and public officials who in various ways worked to defeat the attempted Selfie Fest on January 6th and preserve the nation's democratic traditions. In a White House ceremony, the president recounted the physical and moral courage shown by the 14 honorees amid a multi-pronged effort to subvert the election. 3 of the awards were given posthumously. Biden described January 6th as the product of lies about the 2020 election. He did not mention former President Trump, though his predecessor continued to falsely claim that the election was stolen. Editorialization, all of it. On January 6th, our democracy was attacked, and I mean our hegemony. But don't say that, because democracy sounds fun and peaceful, and hegemony makes us sound evil, man. Come on. There's no other way of saying it. The U.S. Capitol was breached, or Capitol police officers let people in, which had never happened before in the history of the United States of America, man. Come on. Which is also a lie. A violent mob of insurrectionists assaulted law enforcement, vandalized sacred halls. And what was the Kavanaugh riots? And hunted down elected officials, all for the purpose of an attempt to overthrow the will of the people and usurp the peaceful transfer of power, which wasn't going to happen for 2 more weeks, but ignore that for a second. All of it was fueled by lies about the 2020 election, man. Come on. So, that's ceremony. And really, honestly, the left needs January 6th. That's why they continually bring it up. They need January 6th. I remind you again, the greatest, and I'm going to use the word, the greatest insurrection that you can do against the federal government is to stock your pantry, to arm up, to stock up on ammo, make sure you know your perimeter, and make sure you are trained to cook, preserve your own food, grow your own food, and defend your own perimeter. That is the greatest insurrection you can commit against the federal government, whose base model in its current form depends on you being helpless and in need of the government. And by the way, I do all of that. You are not going to take over the government unarmed by walking up and letting the Capitol Police let you in and then milling around aimlessly in the rotunda, while a handful of selected people, plants, get their way into the Senate chamber and steal the podium and walk around in buffalo horns. Cue shaman. Jeffries then led the crowd, which included families of the fallen officers, for a moment of silence that lasted 140 seconds. 1 second for each officer who has suffered serious injuries. They found the cops that are not in the all cops, who are bastards. So, that's their ceremony. Let's grab one from Reuters. Biden lauds heroes of January 6th attack on second anniversary. From Jeff Mason. Let's skip this one. This one's mostly a review of the last 2. But there were 2 big gaffes that were posted to Twitter, and then Daily Wire may have some more gaffes here, because Biden couldn't make it through with this solemn speech without screwing up. Let's listen. Let's start here, shall we? Joe Biden forgets the date of January 6th and calls it July 6th.
Consequential, not a joke. If I can halt for a second and just say to you, the impact what happened on July the 6th had international repercussions beyond what I think any of you can fully understand. Fully consequential, not a joke. If I can halt for a second and just say to you, the impact what happened on July the 6th had international repercussions.
I love how he starts that out by saying, not a joke. And then, gaffes. What else do we have here? Biden just said that Capitol Officer William Evans died as a result of threats by these sick insurrectionists. Greg Price reminds us that Officer Evans was killed by a Black Nation of Islam supporter who rammed him with a car. And by the way, that was 8 months after January 6th. That was August of 2021, if I remember correctly. I'm going to look that up while we listen to that clip.
It's long overdue. Today is a ceremony to honor heroes of January 6th. We also recognize the late U.S. Capitol Police Officer
I'm sorry, that was only 4 months after. That was April 2nd, 2021.
Billy Evans. His family's with us today. 3 months after January 6th, while they're still cordoning off the Capitol because threats by these sick insurrectionists continued to be profligated on the internet. Again, all America saw what happened. What Officer Evans was killed defending the checkpoint he'd had to go through to get up to the Capitol because of these god-awful sick threats that continue to move forward. And the whole world saw it. It's just hard to believe. It's hard to believe it could happen here in America.
It's hard to believe because it didn't happen that way. Again, Officer Evans, who actually probably would have been there, because he would have been on duty at the time, lived for another 4 months, and then got hit by a Black Nation of Islam supporter with a car against a fence in an event that got completely memory holed almost immediately. See what the Daily Wire brings us forward from more of this. Yeah, we had the July the 6th. We saw that one. The Officer Evans one. Oh, we have another one. 20,000 pounds of fentanyl, enough to kill 1,000 people in this country. Oh, that's an old one. That's not the same speech from today. Yeah, he's a gaffe master. Let's read what Daily Wire has to say. Biden's January 6th flub caps a week of gaffes. From Virginia Kruta. President Biden capped off a week of gaffes on Friday when, during his remarks commemorating the 2-year anniversary of the January 6th Selfie Fest, he recalled the date as being July the 6th. While attempting to drive home the international impact of events that transpired on that day, Biden gave the wrong date. Yeah, we saw that. And while a few people did point out the fact that July 6th was former President George W. Bush's birthday, born on that day in 1946, which that qualifies as a darker day in U.S. history, by the way, than January the 6th, most quickly realized that Biden had simply gotten the date wrong. Also on Friday, Biden once again suggested that Capitol Police Officer William Evans died as a result of threats by these sick insurrectionists, referring to the rioters at the Capitol, despite the fact that he was actually killed in early April of 2021 when a car rammed into him and one other officer who was also injured but survived the attack. So, there you go. That's 80 million votes, folks. 10 scoops of ice cream. More votes than Barack Obama. I've got a couple more talking about this, but I have one slight transition article that I wanted to touch on, because we're going to be talking about Kevin McCarthy in a bit, and then there's some aftermath of what happened today that I want to talk about. From the BBC, how January 6th may have doomed Kevin McCarthy's speaker hopes. from Anthony Zurcher. Kevin McCarthy's grueling bid to become the Speaker of the House may finally be decided on the second anniversary of perhaps the most difficult day of his career. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. On January 6th, a mob of Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol. The then House Minority Leader and President Trump engaged in an angry phone conversation. "You've got to call these people off," Mr. McCarthy demanded that of Mr. Trump, according to Congressman Jamie Herrera Butler of Washington, whom Mr. McCarthy told of the call. "They're your people." "Well, Kevin, I guess they're just more upset about the election theft than you are," Mr. Trump replied. What followed, according to the Congresswoman, was an exchange of obscenities. 2 years later, Mr. McCarthy is back in the same halls of Congress, ransacked by the mob, attempting, unsuccessfully for 3 full days, to win the speakership of the House of Representatives. 4 full days. His circuitous journey to that point is part of the reason he's in such a precarious position today. A week after the dust settled from the Capitol attack, Mr. McCarthy took to the floor of the House to say Mr. Trump bears responsibility for the violence and should have denounced it immediately. He said, which, by the way, he did. We can go back to his Twitter and see it. He said the attempt to disrupt the certification of Biden's presidential victory was undemocratic, un-American, and criminal, even though there's been no evidence that he was the one that did any of this. While he did not support Mr. Trump's impeachment, he backed a formal censure of the president. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, he was telling Republican associates that he would urge the president to resign before his term expired later that month. "I've had it with this guy," he would be recorded telling a group in private phone conversation. Fast forward just 2 weeks, Mr. McCarthy was traveling to Palm Beach to meet with this guy in show of support that seemingly contradicted his earlier public and private words. Yeah, once again, and this is what I've said about McCarthy from the beginning. A part of the reason that he is in such dire straits is he's spent so much time denigrating those who have taken up the former president's mantra, but also because a lot of people know and have pointed out that he is doing whatever he can to get power, to stay in power. He is like, not so much Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan actually had enough principle to say, yeah, no, I'm a war pig. I'm just in this for the money. And I'm not going to find the money off of Trump, so I'm going to get off that train. For all of the faults that Paul Ryan had, and there were many of them, he was actually principled enough to not go down the MAGA path because he knew that he didn't believe in it. But McCarthy isn't like that. McCarthy, like Ron Johnson, like Jim Jordan, comes up and just goes to wherever the most power is in the Republican Party. If that comes from being a MAGA person, then he's a MAGA person. If that comes from blowing up brown kids in the Middle East, he's all in on blowing up brown kids in the Middle East. If that comes from yelling Jesus, Jesus, he yells Jesus, Jesus louder than anybody else. If that comes from giving away money to his rich donor class buddies, then he gives away more money to his rich donor class buddies than anybody else in the Congress. He goes wherever the political winds take him, and nobody knows where he actually stands. Part of the reason he's having so much difficulty right now. Alright, some more current events. And then we'll go on to talk more about McCarthy. From Fox 5 out of DC. Ashley Babbitt's mom arrested near Capitol at pro-January 6th rally. Well, I don't necessarily think that Ashley Babbitt actually existed, but if she did, and you were her mom, why would you go there on that day? You're just asking for trouble. And again, I remind you, do not bring your fight to the Capitol. They will kill you. In fact, they have no problem killing people of that bloodline. So why would you risk it? From Fox 5 DC Digital Team. Exactly 2 years after her daughter was shot and killed by a U.S. Capitol Police officer defending the Capitol, Ashley Babbitt's mother was arrested at a pro-January 6 rally. Capitol Police reported that Mickey Withoft, 58, was part of a group of demonstrators who were illegally blocking traffic on Independence Avenue near First Street in Southwest Friday afternoon. Officials said Wittheft and the other protesters did not have a permit to rally on the Capitol grounds. Yes, the fact that you have to ask the government for permission to protest against the government is peak irony. When officers told the group to get out of the road or face arrest, Capitol Police said Whitheft would not comply. Babbitt's mother, police said, was given multiple warnings, but she refused to leave. Instead, she turned around with her hands behind her back and asked officers to arrest her. Whitheft was arrested around 1:45 p.m. and charged with obeying an order, as well as blocking and obstructing roadways. She was processed and released Friday afternoon after receiving a citation to appear in court. Yeah, a lot of that was just for show. It didn't really do anything. I'd love to see how this goes over, especially in Discovery. Longtime partner of officer who died after January 6th, by the way, not from January 6th, after January 6th, files wrongful death lawsuit against Trump and others. Dude, I would drop that because you are going to get eviscerated in Discovery. Especially given the fact that your partner died after the fact. He didn't die at January 6th. Don't be stupid. From Rachel Scott, Victor Ordonez, and Olivia Rubin. The longtime partner of one of the Capitol Police officers who died after being attacked in the January 6th Selfie Fest has filed a wrongful death suit against Donald Trump, according to a copy of the complaint obtained by ABC News. And the worst part is this guy probably thinks he has something. The suit, filed in federal court on Thursday by Sandra Garza, the partner of Officer Brian Sicknick, comes nearly 2 years since the attack and accuses Trump of being responsible for Sicknick's death. Yes, he waved his hand and made the blood clot that was there suddenly go up to Sicknick's brain. Along with Trump, the suit also names 2 men as defendants, Julian Cater and George Tanios, who were charged with assaulting Sicknick with chemical spray. Cater has since pleaded guilty to assaulting police with a dangerous weapon. Tanios pleaded guilty to entering and remaining in a restricted building and disorderly or disruptive conduct in that building. Persecutors, I stand by what I said that Tanios was the one who brought the spray. Tanios' attorney wrote last year in a court filing that he didn't personally commit violent acts on January 6th. Garza's suit alleges wrongful death and conspiracy, among other claims. It seeks $10 million in damages, good frickin' luck, from each defendant. The horrific events of January 6th, including Officer Sicknick's tragic wrongful death, were a direct and foreseeable consequence of the defendant's unlawful actions, the suit alleges. Are you stupid? Responding to the suit, Tanios' attorney said in a statement, simply, Mr. Tanios was present at the Capitol grounds trespassing and disorderly. The recent civil lawsuit naming him as a defendant veers well beyond what the facts support and misconstrues Mr. Tanios' actual conduct. Mr. Tanios will address those allegations at the appropriate time after the conclusion of the pending criminal case. In a statement, Trump's spokesperson said the former president clearly and unequivocally stated Americans should peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard. The spokesperson also argued the Democratic lawmakers and many others have promoted the ultra-violence against conservatives and those who will not bow down to their deranged ideology. President Trump is immune from frivolous attacks and will continue to be fully focused on his mission to make America great again. So that's going to go just about nowhere. And Insider, another criticism to the Republican Party, because that's pretty much all that they do. Republicans were too busy sorting out Kevin McCarthy's speakership bid to join the January 6th commemoration on the riot's 2-year anniversary. Yes, we're too busy trying to make deals, trying to figure out how to deal and do something with a majority that most people appreciate happening, but still can't stand the person who's standing at the front of that, to go back and join in a frivolous back-padding event put on by Democrats over a frivolous riot that was put on by Democrats. From Brian Metzger. 2 years after January 6th, let's move down into the actual article. On Friday morning, lawmakers gathered on the East Front steps of the U.S. Capitol to honor the police officers who died or were injured during the Capitol Selfie Fest 2 years ago to the day. Just one Republican appeared to show up at the ceremony, Rep. Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. "I wanted to be here," Fitzpatrick told Insider after the ceremony, saying he didn't know if he was the only member of the party on the steps. All members-elect were invited. The 10 a.m. ceremony seemed to overlap with the scheduled 10:15 a.m. conference call for Republicans to discuss the latest round of negotiations in Republican leader Kevin McCarthy's quest to become the Speaker of the House. However, the ceremony had largely concluded by 10:18 a.m. Fitzpatrick pointed to the call as the reason. Other Republicans, including leadership, were not in attendance. "I couldn't even see who was there, but I do know that there was a call regarding this whole speakership thing," he told reporters. So, my question is this a video or not? I guess we can find out. Let's have a look. Let's de-archive the tweet. Now let's scroll down. It looked like that might be video. Doesn't appear to be. Never mind. Nope, doesn't appear to be video. Okay. Let's keep reading. I have that video, by the way. I have that video, Grant. We'll watch that when we get into the speakership side. During the ceremony, members of Congress honored the 4 officers who lost their lives as a result of the Selfie Fest: Brian Sicknick and Howard Liebengood, and the D.C. Metro officers Gunther Hashida, Kyle DeFreitag, and Jeffrey Smith, 3 of whom committed suicide, possibly by a bullet to the back of the head. Ringing a bell each time their names were called, Sicknick suffered violent attacks during the riot, while 4 other officers died by suicide in the days and months afterward, mostly because they probably weren't going to play ball and testify, and they could easily go back and blame this on other people. Alright. And one last one on January 6th, before we go talk about McCarthy. Who could have seen this coming? January 6th committee releases Social Security numbers of top Trump officials, Republican governors. Yeah, that's due for a lawsuit. From Tim Pierce. The House January 6th committee, now disbanded, released Social Security numbers belonging to hundreds of Americans, including former Trump staffers and other top Republican officials. After the committee's last public meeting last month, it released a trove of official records, testimonies, transcripts, and other information that it collected as part of its 18-month investigation into the Selfie Fest at the U.S. Capitol. One of those documents was a spreadsheet containing nearly 2,000 Social Security numbers of people who visited the White House on December of 2020. Why? Why do you need to have Social Security numbers to make an investigation into somebody? If this isn't illegal, this should be illegal. And why are you in a position, by the way, to release them? Among the SSNs on the list, since removed from the January 6 files, but not probably before a bunch of enterprising people got a hold of them, was information associated with at least 3 Trump cabinet members, as well as some Republican governors and numerous officials and allies, according to the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness. Those people whose information was on the spreadsheet are now at elevated risk to be victims of identity theft-related crimes, Identity Theft Resource Center COO James Lee said. Of course they are, because they dissented against the establishment and status quo of the government. I am so unbelievably sick of this authoritarian government using every avenue possible outside of officially persecuting people to officially persecute people. This is the government our forefathers warned us about. This crap right here. The committee appears to have not immediately notified officials of the leak. Of course it didn't, because it was intentional. Ian Fury, spokesperson of the South Dakota Republican Governor Kristi Noem, whose information was on the removed document, said, "To my knowledge, they were not notified. The governor was not notified." Ben Carson, whose information was also on the sheet, told the Post, whether it was careless and sloppy handling of the records or deliberate disregard of decorum, I'm going to go with the latter. Either scenario is perfunctory and callous display of government and a frightening reminder of the current state in Washington. President Reagan was a savant indeed. The 9 most frightening words to hear are, "I am from the government and I'm here to help." Won't be surprised if Adam Kinzinger throws those up on the front page of CNN. Let's talk about Kevin McCarthy. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the fact that it does appear that some people are getting tired of the theatrics, and they're coming in here to go back and say, okay, let's just make him the speaker and get on with it. Because, well, let's just say Republicans have no spine. McCarthy flips 15 votes as he fights for the speaker's gavel. From Claire Ferran, Manu Raju, Annie Grayer, Melanie Zanona, and Lauren Fox. And we can listen to McCarthy too. I don't know why we would want to, but we can. In a dramatic shift, Kevin McCarthy has so far managed to flip 15 votes on Friday in his bid to become the next House Speaker, though the California Republican is still short of the support needed to win. The House has voted to adjourn until 10 p.m. Eastern Time. McCarthy is locked in a fight for his political future as the California Republican attempts to win the votes he needs to become the Speaker of the U.S. House, in what has now become the longest contest in 164 years. As efforts to secure a deal with holdouts have gained momentum, McCarthy is now projecting confidence that he will be able to win the gavel this evening. Well, I haven't gone back to check on anything yet and see anything live, but so far as I know, he hasn't. Let's go check on Twitter and see, because it'll be trending if he is. No, nothing yet. Although I got a funny meme in response to the episode announcement here. Let's put this over here for just a second. Of course, the announcement. Happy January 6th, everyone. I hope you got everything you wanted and the government oppression you deserved. What does even one give for a war pig's crawling gift? Contemporary starts right now. Keenan Orcutt, with a reply of the Babylon Bee article, says Adam Kinzinger's mom lets him open one January 6th present on January 6th Eve. I like that. That's funny. When we come back tonight, we'll have the votes to get this done once and for all. It just reminds me of what my father always told me. It's not about how you start, it's about how you finish, McCarthy told reporters. Moderates are frustrated by the concessions, which many believe will make it harder for the new GOP majority to effectively govern, though they will likely still swallow them. Indeed, some of the concessions McCarthy made may weaken his hand if he does become Speaker, though he has disputed that suggestion. I think at the end of the day, we're going to be more effective, more efficient, and that definitely government is going to work, he said on Friday. Well, see, that's part of the scary part of this, is that government's going to work. Several Republican members who switched their votes back to McCarthy on Friday said they're encouraged by a framework of an agreement, but provided no specifics about the deal and said talks are ongoing. It's a framework of an agreement in good faith that allows us to keep moving forward, Perry told reporters after 14 Republicans flipped their vote for McCarthy in a 12th roll call. Roy cautioned the talks are ongoing and there's more work to be done. We're not done yet, right? We don't have 218 on the floor yet, and we're going to keep having conversations, Roy said. Bishop said the central details are known. This framework has a considerable amount of details. We've worked very hard to make sure it's achievable, that it has teeth, and it's understood well. The 14 votes, the 14 traitors, who are willing to let Kevin McCarthy become the Speaker of the House just because he says it's his turn are Dan Bishop of North Carolina, Michael Cloud of Texas, Andrew Clyde of Georgia, Byron Donalds of Florida, Mary Miller of Illinois, Ralph Norman of South Carolina, Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, Chip Roy of Texas, Victoria Sparks of Indiana, Paul Gosar of Arizona, and Representatives-elect Josh Brashear of Oklahoma, and Paulina Luna of Florida, Kevin Self of Texas, and Andy Oakles of Tennessee. By the way, my representative is not on that list because he went straight for McCarthy the first time. I don't even know who my rep is right now. Or my rep-elect, I guess. Because Kind is out. On the 13th ballot, McCarthy picked up one more supporter, Andy Harris of Maryland. So if you are represented by any of these people, let them know what you think about this. There are still 6 Republicans voting against McCarthy: Andy Biggs, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Bob Good of Virginia, Matt Rosendale of Montana, and Eli Crane of Arizona. Based 6. 2 members who have been absent for votes on Friday, Ken Buck of Colorado and incoming freshman Wesley Hunt of Texas, are expected to return tonight. Both lawmakers are McCarthy supporters. Boo! On the 12th round of voting, the final tally was 213 for McCarthy, 4 for Jim Jordan, and 3 for Kevin Hearn. On the 13th round, McCarthy had 214 and Jordan had 6. Why Jordan, of all people? That's my biggest problem with this. Why Jordan? But these are the people who have turned their backs on you. Let's listen to what McCarthy has to say.
Yeah, we just spoke to Kevin McCarthy, talking to him about this historic and unprecedented in modern times speaker vote, going to failing on 11 straight times. He still is maintaining the position that he will be elected speaker. He says he has no time frame for that. He also defended the concessions that he has made to the far right of his conference. He contended he will not be a weaker speaker because of them. And I asked him, why didn't you get this resolved by January 3rd when this began? He said they tried to, but they weren't able to. And then when we asked him whether or not this will be resolved by tomorrow, he didn't say.
Wrapped up by tomorrow?
No, I'm not putting any timeline on it. I just think we've got some progress going on. We've got members talking. I think we've got a little movement, so we'll see.
Have you had to walk back the threats of your strip committee assignments from these members?
We're not stripping. I didn't make those threats.
Was that a mistake to make that threat?
I didn't make that
Mike
threat.
Rogers did.
Yeah, well, you're saying I made the threat, so let's be very clear. I did not make the threat, and no, members are not going to lose their committee assignments.
How long do you think this is going to drag out for at this point?
I'd love to know, but we're working through, and we made good progress today, so we'll continue to talk.
Did you he will never...
So I am curious about that because from everything that I'd heard, and I hadn't reported on it because there wasn't a green check verified source for it, but there have been rumors in the chat that yes, the people are going to be blocked from committee assignments if they don't fall into line, which that does seem like a McCarthy thing to do. But I don't know if it is true or not.
vote for you.
At this stage, it would take this long in the negotiation? I mean, we're 3 days into this. This is the longest since the 1850s.
Well, I have the longest speech on the floor, so apparently I like to make history.
Are you concerned? I mean, you're giving one member the power to oust you if you're a speaker.
That's the way it's always been, except for the last speaker. I think I'm very fine with that.
But you're fine. Undercut your potential power as speaker. I mean,
Has it undercut the power of all the other speakers?
But it was used over John Boehner.
So why would it cut
But
me?
we haven't been in this position since 1859. I mean, doesn't that inherently mean that you would be a weaker speaker?
No.
Explain.
It'd only be a weaker speaker if I was afraid of it. I'm not a weak.
Are you concerned that there might be more than 4 who will just never vote for you among the Republicans?
No, I think we get there.
Do you plan to go to conference?
Are you worried about losing votes from moderates if you give too much away?
Everybody's involved in it. He's got to get there completely. And look,
Mr. McCarthy,
can I finish his answer first? His question? Thank you. Look, this is a new thought we're going to have. We have a 5-seat majority. So it's not one side's going to get more than another. It's the entire conference is going to have to learn how to work together. So it's better that we go through this process right now so we can achieve the things we want to achieve for the American public, what our commitment was. So if this takes a little longer and it doesn't meet your deadline, that's okay, because it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And if we finish well, we'll be very successful.
Do you plan to go to conference, Mr. McCarthy?
You've been doing this for 2 months, though. Why did one of these sort it out before January 3rd?
Well, we tried to sort it out.
Mr. McCarthy, do you plan to go to conference?
Thank you for stopping.
Mr. McCarthy, do you plan to go to conference?
So that last part saying, we tried to...
So that's what he had to say about that. Let's grab one from NBC. House adjourns until 10 p.m. as McCarthy nears the votes needed to become Speaker. So about an hour after we're done here, they'll be doing this again. From Scott Wong and Elie Vitale. In a stunning breakthrough, the House GOP leader, Kevin McCarthy, won support from 14 of his detractors. As a diminished band of conservative hardliners continue to block him from winning the prize Speaker's gavel. The House opened Friday with a dramatic scene on the 12th ballot when 13 conservative rebels switched their vote to McCarthy. Yeah, we talked about this earlier, with the names, by the way. But the fresh start support didn't earn McCarthy the majority of all House members voting, which he needs to win the Speaker's gavel, meaning GOP stalemate will continue through a fourth day to more ballots. The House adjourned until 10 p.m. as McCarthy waits for 2 of his supporters to fly back to Washington for additional votes on Friday evening. I believe... No, that still doesn't get him there because it sounds to me like that will bring him to 215 with the 2 of them coming back. With 5 more still holding out. And him needing to get to 218. If Kevin McCarthy doesn't bow out, he'll have to live the entirety of his speakership in a straitjacket constructed by those rules that we're working on now, Gates said in a Fox News appearance Thursday night, nodding to efforts to water down McCarthy's power. Which is a good thing. That's a good thing. And the shame game starts. From the USA Today, these House lawmakers received campaign money from Kevin McCarthy, then voted against him. From Aaron Mansfield and Donovan Slack. And by the way, this is one of the things that they're talking about putting as a rule for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker of the House, is that he's not allowed to interfere in elections, both for the positive and the negative. Because it does put him and the members in a compromised position. It really does. Oh, Jesus Christ. They're bad tonight, you guys. Bye-bye. From Aaron Mansfield and Donovan Slack. As part of his years-long bid to secure the highest post at the House of Representatives, McCarthy raised tens of millions of dollars to help his party win the majority in 2022, and spent much of it helping neoconservatives who are going to support him across the country win or retain their seats. Some of that money went to 13 of the same House Republican lawmakers who are voting repeatedly to keep McCarthy from taking the gavel as Speaker, according to records from the FEC. The other 7, including the most vocal defectors, Gates and Boebert, received nothing. Obviously. Politicians in leadership positions often use their war chest to build support among the people they helped elect. That may not have worked for McCarthy this time. Here's a rundown of who received money, what from McCarthy-aligned PACs. And wouldn't you know it, this is actually all the names of the people who flipped their votes. So of course it did. We know all these names because we read them in the CNN article. Let's talk about Matt Gaetz. Kyle Becker. Matt Gaetz just nuked McCarthy on the House floor, which I'm kind of curious about. Let's have a listen. I've not read this or pre-watched this video, so I'm hearing this for the first time with you, unless you guys saw it before me earlier today.
Speaker, my colleague from California, Mr. Garcia, knows the incredibly high regard I hold him in. He is a patriot. I deeply, deeply admire him, but I must take some exception with some of the comments he made in his nomination of Mr. McCarthy. First, he said that Mr. McCarthy has earned the position. You only earn the position of Speaker of the House if you can get the votes. Mr. McCarthy doesn't have the votes today. He will not have the votes tomorrow, and he will not have the votes next week, next month, next year. And so one must wonder, Madam Clerk, is this an exercise in vanity for someone who has done the math, taken the counts, and is putting this institution through something that absolutely is avoidable? My colleague, Mr. Garcia, did not say, but many of my other Republican colleagues have. They believe that Mr. McCarthy has earned the position of Speaker of the House because he raised $500 million to get Republicans elected. Going
The gentleman is not recognized.
Members are reminded not to engage in personalities against other members of the House.
Members are reminded not to engage in personalities against other members of the House.
Several believe that one earns the position of Speaker.
And some of this is a vanity project, and you guys know that I don't listen to a lot of political commentary anymore. Except I've listened to a little bit more on this one because it's so historic, and so many of the usual criminals are weighing in with bad takes, like when we talked about Shapiro yesterday. But I do still listen to Sticks, and he is right on the money, directly over the target, when he points out that yes, this is Hillary 2.0. It's his turn. He paid his dues. Just let him be Speaker. It's his turn, and it's not his turn. He has to earn it, just like everybody else, and he has thus far not done it. Let's grab one from Fox. Republicans explode in uproar as Gaetz accuses McCarthy of vanity in House Speaker showdown. From Kyle Morris. Is that who we just got the tweet from? No, that was Kyle Becker. Remarks from Florida GOP Rep Matt Gaetz, one of several Republicans opposed to Kevin McCarthy's bid for Speaker, led to an outburst from one of his GOP colleagues as he spoke on the House floor on Friday. You only earn the position of Speaker of the House if you can get the votes. Mr. McCarthy doesn't have the votes today. He will not have the votes tomorrow, and he will not have the votes next week, next month, next year, Gaetz said as he nominated Jim Jordan to serve as the next Speaker of the House. And so, one must wonder, Madam Clerk, is this an exercise in vanity for someone who's done the math, taken the counts, and is putting the institution through something that's absolutely avoidable, he added. Gaetz' remarks were met with groans from his Republican colleagues who were sitting around him during the nomination process. In opposition to Gaetz' comments, Rep. Mike Bost of Illinois arose and shouted across the chamber at Gaetz as he pointed a finger, which I know that the clerk came out and said, "Order, order, this, you're not recognized," but I mean, this is what the House was supposed to be. Bost was interrupted by the House clerk, who called the House to order as Bost remained standing and shouting. While it's unclear exactly what Bost said to Gaetz, several Republicans vacated their seats shortly after the comments were made and headed towards the back of the chamber as Gaetz continued speaking. Let's go listen to this again and see if we can actually hear what Bost said, because it's in the clip. I couldn't hear it, but we're going to try again.
Speaker, my colleague from California, Mr. Garcia, knows the incredibly high regard I hold him in. He is a patriot. I deeply, deeply admire him, but I must take some exception with some of the comments he made in his nomination of Mr. McCarthy. First, he said that Mr. McCarthy has earned the position. You only earn the position of Speaker of the House if you can get the votes. Mr. McCarthy doesn't have the votes today. He will not have the votes tomorrow, and he will not have the votes next week, next month, next year. And so one must wonder, Madam Clerk, is this an exercise in vanity for someone who has done the math, taken the counts, and is putting this institution through something that absolutely is avoidable? My colleague, Mr. Garcia, did not say that. Many of my other Republican colleagues have. They believe that Mr. McCarthy has earned the position of Speaker of the House because he raised $500 million to get Republicans elected.
Yeah, if the clerk hadn't shouted in, we actually would have been able to hear Boss, because I could hear some of what he was saying quite clearly. All right, from the Daily Wire. Gates says he'll resign if Dems put McCarthy over the top, take swipe at Trump. Hell, is that all it's going to take? Dems, let's get on board. I am not a fan of Gates. Even though I'm a fan of what he's doing right now, I'm not a fan of Gates. That's like a catch-22 for me. Get rid of McCarthy, get rid of Gates. God, which one is the lesser of two evils here? From Daily Wire News. Florida firebrand Matt Gaetz, who is at the center of a GOP faction's fight to block McCarthy from becoming House Speaker, said he will resign if Democrats come to McCarthy's aid, and also took a swipe at former President Trump in a Fox News appearance on Thursday. Gaetz is one of 20 Republicans who have so far refused to vote for McCarthy. To inherit the Speaker's gavel from Auntie Nancy after the GOP eked out a slim majority in the November midterms. On Thursday, McCarthy failed for an 11th time to get the necessary 218 votes to assume the role. While some holdouts have signaled a willingness to back McCarthy in exchange for concessions, Gaetz said he isn't planning to change his votes. I wouldn't be betting on my vote for Kevin McCarthy under almost any circumstance, Gaetz told Fox News host Laura Ingraham, adding that in the unlikely scenario a handful of Democrats helped McCarthy put over the top, he would step down. Dude, I would, by the way, we'll go watch the clip in just a moment. As much as, and I know that these Democrats, just like when we talked about the Republicans crossing the aisle for Jeffries, which I know that couldn't happen because they'd never be able to go back to their districts, any Democrat who crosses the aisle to go get McCarthy elected will not finish out their term. They will be forced into resignation from the people they represent. Or we'll actually see an insurrection, one of the two. But let's watch Gaetz on Ingram.
Congressman Matt Gaetz, who has voted 11 times for candidates other than McCarthy. Congressman, great to see you tonight. I love seeing you, by the way, with Congresswoman Jayapal. What were you talking about there? I love seeing that video. Any scoop you can give us? That was funny. I'm like, what are they talking about?
My conversations with Democrats have largely been about making sure that they don't leave the floor for dinner or fundraisers or whatnot. We need them to stay there so that the denominator in the equation on the election of a speaker allows us to have leverage to push for many of the things we've been discussing on the budget, on term limits, on the order of the House of Representatives. So committee assignments and chairmanships aren't bought and sold based on who's able to redistribute the most lobbyist money, while the American people are often left behind in a corrupt, broken system in Congress.
Yeah, I think that your point about rushing off to events with consultants or fundraisers is important. I saw there was a fundraising email sent out by Andy Biggs, who's one of the other individuals, of course, opposing McCarthy. And he sent a fundraiser out as the action was happening on the floor saying, we blocked Kevin McCarthy from becoming Speaker of the House, but now we conservatives must lead the fight to get the leadership we deserve. Congressman Gates, is that the right, we love Congressman Biggs, but is that the right approach given your message about don't run out to the fundraisers?
Well, I wanted to make sure people stayed on the floor. I've sent out similar emails, and the reason is because pro-McCarthy groups have actually been running robocalls in our districts trying to pressure us and leverage us. So, yes, when you have Kevin McCarthy utilizing his extensive political resources to battle against House conservatives, we want the great patriots all throughout this land to go to mattgaetz.com, chip in, so that I can fight back and get a message out about the great things that we are working to achieve. And it is not the end of the world that we take a few extra days or maybe even a couple weeks to sort this out. I mean, Laura, you know this. There are some days in Congress where the only thing we vote on is the changing of the name of one post office. Now we're deciding who's second in line to the presidency, and the construct of these rules concessions functionally turn the speakership into a ceremonial position. Matter of fact, if my colleagues get what they want from McCarthy, the chairman of the Freedom Caucus will actually be more important than the Speaker of the House in determining the legislation that reaches the floor, how amendments are processed, and how spending occurs going forward.
Yeah, I get what you're, on the establishment issues, I'm totally with you, okay? But I'm always also about the art of the possible, what's possible here. So you did get a number of concessions that I'm not sure if I were on the other side I would have given you, but a number of concessions from McCarthy, an attempt to get, to 218. So he lowered the threshold of the votes required to begin the process of removing himself as Speaker. Just one person, one member of the conference can do it now. And to keep, he also agreed to keep his own PAC out of GOP primaries and also to add more Freedom Caucus members to the House Rules Committee. And I understand he also signed on to a separate approval process for earmarks and allowed floor votes on term limits for members and specific border policy legislation. What else do you require that he do or agree to before Matt Gaetz will say, okay, I'm on board?
I wouldn't be betting on my vote for Kevin McCarthy under almost any circumstance. But it's important to note that all of those bullet points you just presented.
Wait, hold on. Wait, that's personal then. You just made this very principled point. No. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm a man of principle and I believe in X, Y, and Z, but if he gives me X, Y, and Z, I'm not going to vote for him. What?
Well,
how does that make sense?
Here's how it makes sense, Laura. Kevin McCarthy is the masthead of the lobby corps, and I resent the extent to which Kevin McCarthy utilizes the lobbyists and the special interests to be able to dictate how political decisions are made, how policy decisions are made, and how leadership decisions are made. Kevin McCarthy has been in the leadership for 14 years, and he has sold shares of himself to special interests, to
So that's what Gaetz has to say about that. We're not going to listen to any more of that. But, I mean, it's interesting to come back out and hear Gaetz say that because, and by the way, it's interesting to hear Gaetz say that while Democrats on Twitter still continue to support McCarthy as Speaker because he stands against people like Gaetz. Because what Gaetz just said is the exact same criticisms that these Twitter leftoid lunatics say about McCarthy and his branch of the Republican Party. It's the exact same thing, word for word. So that's where we're at with that. What else do we have? Oh, I've got the one that Grant was talking about up here. But Marjorie Taylor Greene had to get back into it because, well, she's a plant. Greene blasts Boebert and other McCarthy opponents over Speaker votes. This is nothing but drama. From Julia Mueller. Marjorie Taylor Greene, the plant, on Thursday blasted a number of her fellow GOP lawmakers, including Lauren Boebert, for opposing Kevin McCarthy's bid for Speaker of the House, kicks off its 11th round of voting for the top leadership spot. I think the American people, no matter how you vote, are sick and tired of this drama, and this is nothing but drama. Greene told CNN. Greene accused Boebert, who nominated Kevin Hern, during an earlier vote of obstruction as McCarthy seeks to secure the majority of votes needed to win. We're on multiple days now with multiple candidates from this group, so I'm not sure how Lauren Boebert on one hand can demand so much out of Kevin McCarthy, but then demand nothing out of someone else, and the willingness to vote for them for Speaker. That's not serious, Green said. Yeah, it's kind of interesting how Marjorie Taylor Greene came out and said, I'm going to drain that there swamp. You just watch me and see. I'm going to drain every last one of them swamp creatures out of there. And then has been so eager to vote for Kevin McCarthy. Let's see. A rebuttal. No video, but something I thought you guys would enjoy. A rebuttal to, and by the way, if you have the kids listening, it's time for earmuffs. We saw this tweet yesterday from Dan Crenshaw. We even saw the video from American Firebrand. Tucker on Crenshaw's terrorist comments over the past few years. Pretty much every part of the war on terror has been turned against the domestic political enemies of the neocons. Crenshaw replying, of course, on quote tweet, unclutch your pearls, it's a figure of speech. You can't insult, slander, and hold everyone hostage with no way out and not expect me to punch back, grow a thicker skin. The response from Scott Stevenson, who is an America Firster. I think he was a candidate for Washington 8 but didn't make it. Let me just check the early life section here. Let's see. No, he didn't make it through the primaries. He got out with 3.9% of the vote in the Republican primaries, so no, he did not make it. But he did make it enough to make a point off of this, and a good one. The American people have been held hostage by you neocon asswipes for years. You can't even stay 2 days of people not falling in line with your pathetic status quo. Forget thicker skin, you need bigger effing balls. Golf clap. Hear, hear. Absolutely, hear, hear. Let's see. Tristan Snell going on to the conspiracy theory that Grant had brought up earlier, and I put it in the Discord for this. What if the whole far-right plan is to stop the House from functioning at all? Yes, what you call the far-right, super authoritarian plan to have anarchy with nobody in charge. Let's listen to what Mr. Snell has to stupidly say.
Ballots and still no speaker. Far-right Republicans say they want someone other than Kevin McCarthy. What if they want no speaker at all? What if their entire plan is to cripple the House? The House can conduct no business at all until there's a speaker. Under the Constitution, all funding for the government has to start in the House. So if there's no functioning House, there's no funding for the government. What if this is a plan to completely grind government to a halt? Now I know this.
And yet this is a person who's saying that everybody on the far right is a super authoritarian.
It may seem outlandish, but somehow it isn't. That's just how far toward fascist anarchy these Trump Republicans have sunk.
Fascist anarchy. That's a new one right there. Fascist anarchy. Authoritarian anarchy. Boy, that sounds compatible, doesn't it? You dumb prick. I hope you still had the earmuffs on the kids. Fascist anarchy. I can't. I can't with this moron. NPR coming on to tell us how evil Republicans are. Congress wasn't always this dysfunctional, except it kind of was. This is from Juana Summers, Matt Ozug, and Sarah Handel. This is an 8-minute listen, but we're going to read part of this. And make sure you hit the donate button because NPR needs our money. It's not your money, comrade. It's our money. And it needs to be put out there to prop up NPR for their quiet microphones. Because the taxpayer funding that they get is not enough to hold them up. So let's see what it is that they have to say over here on Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. What a week it's been in Congress. You've likely heard lots about how unprecedented the repeated failed votes for Speaker have been, or at least that it hasn't happened in about a century, but this is a new level of dysfunction for Congress. To answer that question, we've turned to author and historian John Farrell. He has covered Congress as a journalist and also written bios for former House Speaker Tip O'Neill and Ted Kennedy. The interview has been lightly edited for length and clarity. On his reaction to watching hardline Republicans repeatedly block Kevin McCarthy's chance at winning the speakership this week. I think it's been part of a continuing deterioration of order on Capitol Hill that really dates back to the Berlin Wall coming down and the end of the Cold War. Once we were freed of that common enemy, there was no reason anymore to stop fighting amongst ourselves. And so this golden era that we remember from World War II on through the 50s and 60s is gone now. And we're back to where we were in the 20s or the 1880s or the 1850s. It's not coincidental that the huge speaker battles occurred in the 4 or 5 years before the Civil War, when America was struggling with big economic and regional issues like slavery. It's been rare in the 20th century and so far in this century, but this could be a sign of things to come. On whether things used to be better in Congress and if they've reached a new low. It may be a new low, but things were never golden, really. You had Nixon coming to power as a young congressman and joining the Red Hunters in the McCarthy era. You had Newt Gingrich in the 90s convincing Republicans that they needed to be nastier. Even one of our more staid regular members now, Jim Jordan, started as a member of the Freedom Caucus as the bomb thrower. So over time, these guys see that there's a path in the institution and they become institutionalists. But there's always room for somebody to make the name by being the louder, more explosive member of the group. Yeah, that's what the House was supposed to be. Common men elected from the common man by the common men. And the Senate was supposed to be elected by the government officials, or selected by the government officials, to represent a more, let's say, revered and institutionalist body. Because they represented the government's interests, the interests of the governments of the state to the government, and the representatives represented the people directly. But hey, that's NPR for you. Mike and Mike, listening to the NPR's torture should be banned by the Geneva Connection. But you really have to listen to their quiet microphones. And they will tell you what it's like to think. And what you should think. And why you should be communist, because government is evil. So make sure that you hit that donate button and help fund NPR, undermining the basis of capitalism. Using capitalism. Hit that donate button. Possible Senate rivals split over McCarthy. From Ali Mutnick, we're just going to spend a brief amount of time on this because, oddly enough, members of the Senate have nothing to say about the Speaker of the House. Montana's 2 elected House reps, Matt Rosendale and Ryan Zinke, are already battling it out ahead of a possible statewide showdown, and their state Senate race hasn't even started. The 2 Montana Republicans have found themselves in opposing sides of the GOP's protracted speakership battle, one of 2 pairs of potential 2024 Senate rivals who have diverged on the question of whether or not Kevin McCarthy should be Speaker. The others, Jim Banks and Victoria Sparks of Indiana. After 3 days and 11 votes, McCarthy has been unable to sway any of his detractors, and some of the 21 Republicans who have declined to support his bid have seen their profiles rise this week as they keep Congress in a holding position. Senate primaries next year will hinge on a number of differences between candidates, many of them more important, but the vote could become a major factor, especially as Republicans try to win over a block of GOP primary voters who take a dim view of the party's leaders in Washington. Rosendale, a two-term rep, has been one of McCarthy's more public opponents, writing an op-ed for a local paper that he squandered every opportunity to protect Americans from woke policies. On Thursday, Rosendale nominated an alternate candidate for Speaker on the House floor. Well, I heard that nominating an alternate candidate is insurrection! In contrast, Zinke, who won a newly created district last year, is a staunch McCarthy ally and said the debacle is embarrassing. I didn't come here to be a soundbite for chaos, the cowboy hat-clad Zinke said in an interview off the chamber on Thursday. And of course he did it in a cowboy hat. Why wouldn't he? I didn't come here to be a soundbite as I stand here giving this interview in a cowboy hat. So I guess I was wrong. These are actually both representatives who are both eyeing this Senate spot. So I have to retract my statement in the beginning. But we're still not going to spend a lot of time on this one. But that's the speakership, and in approximately 1 hour and 20 minutes, they're going to reconvene and do it again. But we'll be long off the air by that point. I do want to finish up a couple here before we get down to live chat for the day. So if you have last minute messages in, or if you're just lurking and you want to get your name read, make sure you get messages in now. Tell some friends and see if we can get some spicy stuff in. And I will be saying a special thank you to everybody who chatted in the live chat earlier on in the week. Let's talk about Damar Hamlin. First, CNN doing what CNN does. Watch CNN uses Damar Hamlin's cardiac arrest to attack Republicans. From Daily Wire News, John King used Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin's tragic medical emergency this week to attack the Republican Party as members of Congress try to figure out who will become the next House Speaker. King's comments came as 20 House Republicans refused to back McCarthy's bid for the House Speaker, which has resulted in Congress not being able to do anything because none of the members can be sworn into office. Let's watch.
And so whoever wins the speakership, will that person be speaker for a week, a month, by August when you have to do the debt ceiling? And that means you have to be responsible. And responsible, I think, is the word here. Respecting the system, the organization, the government. Dana, I think, put it as plainly as you can. They don't care. They don't care. Especially when you have a small majority, you have to accept your responsibility as a member of the team. Pick your business, pick your sport. Imagine if a baseball team goes on the field and after 2 pitches the right fielder decides, I want to pitch. It can't work that way. Someone has to be in charge. Someone has to be in charge of any organization. That doesn't mean you always agree with your boss. You don't always agree with your manager. You don't always agree with your coach. Imagine those 2 doctors we just listened to who treated, and all the people on the field who cared for that Buffalo Bills player. Imagine if somebody said, no, or no, I want to do the other job. It doesn't work that way. When you're on a team, you have to, yes, you go to the boss's office and you say, I want this, I want this, I want this. But eventually somebody has to make a decision. And you have to accept the responsibility of government. They don't want that responsibility. They don't care about that responsibility. They don't respect that responsibility. So 58 days after the American people, everybody thought, every historical marker said Republicans would win 20 seats, maybe 30 seats, maybe more. They won 10. They lost a seat in the Senate. Why? Because the American people said, we don't want crazy. We'll take center right.
Well, some of that is honk honk too, but
we won't take center crazy. What are we getting in the House right now? Crazy.
Yeah.
But there's good news, though. From ESPN, Damar Hamlin has breathing tube removed, FaceTimes with the Bills. Is that Aaron Rodgers? Yes, it is. He cut his hair. He broke up with Shailene Woodley and he cut his hair. I guess that means I have to now. No, not yet. We still have to go back and make it so it's long enough to donate. Although it is growing a little bit faster after I moved, I've noticed. This is from Elena Getzenberg. Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin had his breathing tube removed and has been talking with his care team, family, and teammates. Hamlin's breathing tube was removed overnight per the physicians at University of Cincinnati Medical Center in a statement via the Bills. and he continues to progress remarkably in his recovery. His neurological function remains intact per the physicians, and he has been able to talk. Hamlin is talking to loved ones and is also FaceTimed with his teammates as coach Sean McDermott surprised them and the team with Hamlin on the phone via Zoom by saying that he's had a treat in store when he popped up on the screen. The players stood up right away per McDermott, clapped and yelled some things to him. Left tackle Dion Dawkins, however, said the coach gave away the big news with the way that he walked into the room. He's a very straightforward guy, and the amount of expression that he walked into the team room with, you already knew. If you're smiling like this and you have a nice little walk, Sean McDermott, it's the only thing that you could be that happy for, Dawkins said. So, breathing tube out, he's in good health, he's FaceTime with people. I don't know if he's going to come back for the rest of the season, but he's alive and he's going to make it. So, good news on that. I still have questions about what actually happened with this, but I know that he's alive, that he's well, that he's up, getting ready to walk around, and we'll see where this goes from this. Prayers answered. From CNN, Buffalo Bills trainer Denny Kellington saved Damar Hamlin's life on the field, head coach says. From Jacob Lev and Elizabeth Wolf. Just seconds after Bills player Damar Hamlin collapsed on the field with cardiac arrest on Monday, medical personnel swarmed onto the field in an immediate response that has been widely credited for the player's steps towards recovery. But one of the Bills team members, in particular, Assistant Athletic Director Denny Kellington, has been praised by head coach Sean McDermott for saving Damar's life. Bills offensive lineman Dion Dawkins said in a tweet Thursday that it was Kellington who administered critical CPR to Hamlin, who doctors say lost his pulse on the field and had to be immediately revived through resuscitation and defibrillation. For an assistant to find himself at that position and needing to take action that he did and step up and take charge like he did, there were others on the field as well. It's nothing short of amazing, McDermott said of Kellington during a news conference on Thursday. And the courage that took. You talk about a real leader, a real hero in saving Damar's life, and just admire his strength. So, good on him. If he's the one that saved the life, good on him. I'm sure that there were a bunch of other people with that too, but yeah, absolutely. Let's talk FTX. From Reuters, or Business Insider rather, not Reuters. FTX spent nearly $7 million on food and just over $15 million on luxury Bahamian hotels in just 9 months. Court documents show. Dude, how? And how many people were they putting up in that, too, by the way? From Pete Syme. FTX spent $40 million in just over 9 months on expenses, including hotels, entertainment, and flights, according to the bankruptcy court documents reviewed by Insider. Lawyers pointed out that the crypto exchange Bahamian company, FTX Digital Markets, generated no customer revenue but spent lavishly. From January to September 2022, the company spent $15.4 million on luxury hotels and accommodations, the filings say. The largest chunk of that sum, around $5.8 million, was spent at the Albany Hotel, an oceanside resort with its own yacht marina and golf course. Oh, that's how they spend that much. Sam Bankman-Fried, the co-founder and former CEO of FTX, lived in a $30 million penthouse in Albany until his arrest last month. Now he lives in the clink. In 2021, one of the Albany's founders told Fortune that in a high season, accommodation at the resort can cost as much as $60,000 per night. $3.6 million of the FTX hotel spend went to the Grand Hyatt, a 4-star hotel where the cheapest room costs $369 a night. In March 2022, the hotel hosted the Caribbean reception for Prince William and Kate, Princess of Wales. FTX spent $28,954 at that hotel the same month. The company also spent $800,000 at the 5-star Rosewood, where one night costs at least $1,100. According to tech tracking site Grojo, before filing for bankruptcy, FTX had around 1,310 employees, meaning an average of $12,000 per staff was spent on hotels across the 9 months. Insider previously reported FTX's sister company, Alameda, owes $55,000 to the Margaritaville Beach Resort, founded by singer Jimmy Buffett. I mean, looking at that little girl, I'm not really that surprised. I'm not going to lie. Resort staff told Bloomberg that FTX employees stayed around 20 suites. For several months, they had plans to go out onto the town together. The filings reviewed by Insider also showed FTX spent $6.9 million on meals and entertainment. Almost half of that was spent on catering services, with the largest amount. $1.4 million spent on the catering at the Hyatt. FTX also spent around $1 million with a Nassau-based caterer called 6 Stars Catering. It's unclear where the rest of the money was spent. Fox Business previously reported that Bankman-Fried often spent $2,500 on lunch for himself and staff at a Nassau bistro. Meanwhile, putting out commercials telling you to go put more money into this so he could go spend more money off of this. Some of the aftermath. As we went through the trial, U.S. government moves to seize $460 million Robinhood stake linked to Sam Bankman-Fried, which means the government now owns a probably very large percentage of Robinhood. Which means, by the way, I will no longer be using Robinhood. From Allison Morrow and Kara Scannell. The U.S. government is stepping into a contentious, multi-jurisdictional legal battle over the ownership of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets connected to the collapse of Sam Bankman-Fried's crypto empire. The Justice Department said Wednesday it has moved to seize millions of shares of Robinhood, the popular stock trading app, whose ownership is disputed by several parties, including Bankman-Fried himself, his crypto agent. His bankrupt crypto exchange, not agent. FTX and another bankrupt crypto company. We believe these assets are not property of the bankruptcy estate or that they fall within the exceptions of bankruptcy code, Seth Shapiro, a Justice Department attorney, said during a bankruptcy hearing in Delaware on Wednesday. 4 separate entities have laid claim to the approximately 56 million shares worth about $460 million, FTX's new management, which is trying to claw back funds for investors and customers of the bankrupt platform, have sought to wrest control of the shares from an Antigua-based holding company, 90% owned by Bankman-Fried. Yeah, they're gonna take it too, I bet you. I'll leave myself a note for something here. Just popped into my mind. We'll leave that there for right now. So, this is going to get interesting as it goes. Alright, just a couple more, and I don't know if I'll actually be able to read this one because this might be members only. Yep, this is members only. So I've got one more. And then we'll figure out how to listen to what it is that Dr. Peterson has to say. I thought I was going to get to do Dr. Peterson voice today. I will risk my license to escape social media re-education because what I'm doing right now, even though I'm wealthy beyond my means, wealthy beyond my wildest dreams, and work for a great attorney who will make sure that I don't have to do anything in Canada, I will still be descending to the belly of the whale to save my father. But it's members only, so we don't get to read it. But let's listen to Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears. And Republican lawmakers are advocating for school choice legislation with the introduction of a new bill. Winsome Sears saying we cannot continue doing the same thing and expect a different result. Let's listen.
Ago, when I first was elected, we had bills about education choice. 8 years ago, when I sat on the State Board of Education as the vice president, we had issues about education choice. When I worked for the Chamber of Commerce 30 years ago, education choice, folks, it's too many years, and this is where we are. The children are still not learning. So, HB 1508, education success accounts, is the answer. This is not a public school versus private school education. It is not about that. In fact, we can do both.
Amen. Yes.
We can do both. That is a choice. This is about parents making the decision about where their children should attend school. It has always been that was the choice. It was not for black children to get into a white school. Never that. This is the new Brown versus Board of Education fight. This is the new redlining, and we're not going to take it anymore. This is not about funding the rich children's education. Rich parents are not waiting on a government program to decide where to send their children to school. They've already made that choice. What's happening now is what about the rest of us who don't have that choice? So, make no mistake, all of us pay for our children's education. The problem is, the rich make a decision, the rest of us, we only have what the government has chosen to do. We're not doing that anymore. We are making different choices. HB 1508 is here, and we encourage every legislator to vote for this so that parents will indeed make education choices for their children. No one else gets to make that. These are our children. They do not belong to the state. Thank you very much.
Look, my conversations about private school, public school, and choice, I mean, they've changed over the years. I did not care for the fact that you were basically getting something for nothing if you went to, like, if you had school choice and went to a private school, took that school choice and went to a private school. But the fact that our public schools, especially now having lived in a little bit more of an urban setting, I will admit that before, when I was at that point, some of my positions were shaped by the fact that I went to a small town school that I could actually pay attention and could, like, the parents could actually get involved in that. Now, once I started to see inner city schools, I started to realize that, yeah, maybe all private school is not the answer, but putting the competition out there and then also giving people who otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to make the competition happen is going to be helpful to try to, I mean, when people have to compete for dollars, even for government dollars, everybody wins. The foregone conclusion, of course, is that the government schools automatically get the government dollars and everybody else is out in the cold. But when they have to compete for them because the kids are failing, they have to rise up to make themselves appealing enough to get those dollars back, or they should. Now, of course, in most government situations, that's not going to actually be the case, but they should be forced, indeed, to stand up and fight for those dollars. They should. They absolutely should. But they won't. But Winsome Sears, good on her. And with that, we're done with news. So, let's take a moment then and check out the live chat. So, we have got the live chat today. Everybody who chatted, and Ron Helton has definitely been busy, but again, you've got opportunity if you guys want to get in. We'll go right back to the beginning and start from there, because I do want to see everything that you guys had to say. But I also want to say a thank you to everybody who chatted in the live chat throughout the week. And our chatters this week, Ron Helton was our only chatter on Tuesday, but Monday gave us Ron Helton, Luke Wee, Mr. Zed was here, Randy Crush Saga, KTZed, Blind Fear, and A Gains P. Tuesday, as I said, was just Ron Helton. That was the day that we had the catastrophic failure of the Ethernet cord. Wednesday, our chatters were Ron Helton, Quest Fanning, Beam Me Up Mr. Scott, Luke Wee, Randy Crush Saga, and Grant. Yesterday, our top chatters were Grant, Ron Helton, Major Victory, Luke Wee, Randy Crush Saga, and A Gaines P. Today, let's see what it is that you guys had to say. A lot of stuff going on with McCarthy, I know that. We got rid of the spammer, but it still shows up in the robots, so unfortunately we have to see some of that. Go for Papa Palpatine. A mutual friend with myself and Grant says, J6 is my new favorite holiday. Happy Insurrection Day. Happy Insurrection Day to you, my friend. Luke Wee is here. Ron Helton is here. Good evening. J. Edgar, fellow Edheads. 309 for 100% gas here. I think it went down some. It was climbing. That I'm not going to read, Ron Helton, because my FBI agent is watching. I see that Ron Helton has found a new way to censor. Ron Helton says Americans are no longer trying to keep up with the Joneses. Now they're trying to keep up with the Consumer Price Index. That's a fair point. Luke Wee says, yeah, next construction season is going to be crazy. Yeah, because there's going to be a lot of people out there because that's really one of the only jobs that's left. And remember, all these government projects, especially our crumbling infrastructure, is being government funded right now. So it'll be way overbid and nothing's going to get done. It's going to be way overbid with way too much personnel and nothing's going to get done. Ron Helton says, I heard that there are more home buyers than homes available, and that the companies that process wood are going to start cutting production. Can't win for losing. High interest rates equals less building. That is correct. Ron, these people are despicable. They want honors for being safe and secure. Luke Wee says, you're not missing much. It's still a shithole. Now, are you guys doing that, by the way, with the censor? Because I see that Ron and Luke both did it. Or is that Restream bot, or... No, it wouldn't be YouTube, I guess. Is that Restream bot doing it, I wonder? Suppose we can always scroll back on the YouTube chat and see if it's censored. No, it's censored in there too. I wonder if that is... Huh, interesting. Ron says, nope, they will still entertain that redacted in a lawsuit. Just look at what they did to Alex Jones. They had nothing and still have nothing, but pursued Jones anyway. That was some judge shopping too, so there was that. Good thing that our ancestors did not peacefully confront the tyranny of King George. Grant says, where were you on January 6th? I was working and watching a live stream of what was happening that day. And I saw the people climbing on the main stream, and then I tuned into the Stephen Ignoramus stream and saw a whole lot of nothing, honestly. Grant says, I can't remember because it was a completely unimportant day. Ron says, I was watching the Ignoramus stream that day. I was one of the moderators. I'm probably now on a list. Well, you're probably on a list for this chat too. I'm probably on a list. All those videos were taken down by the government and now hidden for our protection. Bunch of snakes. Yeah, and that's part of that too, because again, we can't see the 14,000 hours of video that's out there because it might show a different story than what the narrative is. Grant says, did you see the Blue Anons on Twitter saying the speaker vote is being used to distract from the January 6th stuff? Well, I didn't see the January 6th stuff, but I did see that it was being used to give us fascist anarchy and keep the government from functioning. Ron Selton says it could be. Wouldn't put this past this corrupt mafia government. And then he says they committed self-delete because the government was coming after them as well. And I say government loosely because these clowns are corrupt criminals. Ron Helton, never one to hold back. Oh, I can't do that one, Ron. I appreciate the sentiment, but I can't do that one. But I can do this one. I'm just going to sit here and watch the new Rome burn while to the effing ground. They will eat their own. You don't have a rep, they sold us out. Good Lord, McCarthy sounds like a damn Muppet. He does. There better be some people in jail if they let the snake become speaker. Fauci, Gates, Biden, Harris, Austin, Pelosi, Trump. Clinton, both of those pedos, Clapper, Hayden, Petraeus, Pompeo, Klobuchar. Peterson, let's do Peterson too. Grant, order! Ron says, the Congress is supposed to be a bunch of armed, rambunctious representatives of we the people. I will serve in Congress if I can call some of them out on the green for a duel. I don't know that would go over very well. I got a feeling that might violate some sort of zoning ordinance. Ron Helton has denounced Trump because Trump refused to denounce the jabs. He's also not a fan of Ingram, which, I mean, we talked about that yesterday too. Apparently, once a member of Congress is elected, we the people have very little say over whether they stay or removed. That's a poison system. That's a fair point, actually. And I didn't think of that. What else do we have? Fox News is just controlled opposition. They suck. Yes, they do. That's why I do what I do, by the way. Let's see. Nope, that jackass is not legit. He is a douchebag. Did we ever determine? Yes, they used to shoot each other over differences in the House. I've got a... Oh, that's a redirect from there. I was going to say the FBI might have shut that one down. Ron Helton says, respect the government. What a dick. F the government. We do not serve them. They serve us. Rodgers is a bet jumper. And he's a pretty good quarterback, though. I will admit, as much as I've denounced the NFL, when I watched it on Christmas Day, I noticed that the names of the people from the St. George and the St. Jacob riots weren't on the back of the helmets anymore, and I did enjoy it. And I like seeing Rodgers play. He is good. Ron Helton, so he'll not be retarded. Just joking. I wish the dude the best. Hope he's okay. I do too. Can't read that. Can't read that. Can't read that. Ron Helton says, I worked for a company where a manager never made his bottom line for his unit because he was always ate the best food and stayed at the best places. When I took over, they were amazed that I not only made the bottom line, but I exceeded it by 300%. The guy was a crook. Yeah, I don't want to give a lot of details because it would self-dox myself, but I may have to do that where I'm working too. That may be a thing that happens. Huh. Ron, we need to sanction and invade Canada. They're being run by tyrants. Blame Canada! Blame Canada! They're not even a real country anyway. Ron Helton says, Biden is a boob. He is. Ron says, nope, that is us using symbols. And Luke Weiss says the same thing. I added the symbol in case I wanted to go through. And Ron said, yeah, it'll go through on DLive. F. There you go. And with that, we are done. We're out of here for the day. And we're out of here for the week, too. And the burb. Nobody put the burb in the chat for the music. I like the burb. You guys want to see how long my hair has got? We're a little bit over right now, but it doesn't matter. You want to see that? It's going better. It's actually growing a little bit better now that I got out of the hard water, and even some of this thin spot is starting to not. Like, I'm not growing an afro there by any means, but it's not as bad as it was just a few weeks ago. Ooh, got lightheaded from that. Yeah, there it is. We're going to make somebody a wig out of this. That's going to be somebody's wig in the near future. And yeah, it is definitely coming in better now. So not so much of it's falling out every time I take a shower. Because we're not sitting in a place where it's just a steady stream of chlorine coming through the faucet. Not chlorine, calcium. I say that every time, and it's never chlorine, it's calcium. There isn't a steady stream of calcium coming down through the faucet. Alright, let's get out of here. Throw the headphones back on. Let's see. Let's throw the outro music up. Let's head out of here for the day. Alright, and with that, we're done. We're out of here. Thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat. It's been a productive day. We got a lot done. We got a lot done this week, too. I am liking this nighttime slot. I do wish that I could, we could pull back some of the audience we had before, but we're getting there. We're getting there slowly, and I'm liking it, and we're getting some more chatter in here. So that's a good thing. That's a good sign. We'll see what happens with that, and maybe we'll, especially with Tim Pool now. Hey, I'm going to be on the morning show now. Look at that. No, we're just going to, I'm afraid it'll detract from IRL, but yeah, we're just going to go every morning, all the time. Just all Tim Pool all the time. I wish you well in that endeavor. And yes, I have been hate listening to Tim Pool talk about the McCarthy thing. I have. I'll admit to that. But yeah, he's going to be on all the time. So I think that's actually might take some of the competition back out of the running as well. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if we can get some of that out of there. People are shifting out to the morning show, and well, now they're crowding against each other. Well, I'm sitting here and looking at possibly having all night free and clear, but we'll see what happens with that. Anyway, we'll be back here on Monday for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. Definitely looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing more of you here. Hope to see more of you and start to get some more people streaming in. We've got a lot of numbers, but not a lot of chat, and I do want to see what you guys say, so we'll see if we can find a way, especially if the news stays a little bit light like this, to try to reward you more during the week as well. But we will see you here next time. Make sure you go check out all the great programming for Turns Pages Productions. And stick around if you're on the Twitch side for a raid that we're going to go do in just a moment here. Let's actually see who we're going to go raid. And then we'll hit the off button. Who are we going to raid? Who are we going to raid? I hear myself, and I don't want to hear myself right now. Let's, I don't even know who we're going to go raid right now. We'll find somebody. I'll figure somebody out here. Let's go Skeletora again. We'll do Skeletora, so stick around for that. Otherwise, we'll see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.